Hello everyone, this is Mark DeGallier. Today we're going to go through JavaScript as part of mobile application development. And we're just going to do a quick overview. You're going to have to study up at other sites online if you want to get into more depth in JavaScript if you don't already know it. If you already know it, this is just a quick review. We're just going to go over the important JavaScript elements that you'll be needing to create your mobile app. So let's get started. Here's what we'll cover in this video. I'll discuss why we want to use JavaScript, how to set up a project in your IDE or any other editor, and then give a very rough JavaScript overview that's going to cover only JavaScript, then JavaScript with jQuery, then JavaScript jQuery with jQuery Mobile as a plugin. Those are the three main tools you can use to develop a very nice application. And finally, through the process, we'll probably do some debugging, but I'll also run through the Chrome debugger to show you some tools to debug your programs. So why are we using JavaScript? Well, the end result for this class is to create a mobile app, and we're going to be using PhoneGap or Cordova to do that. And what those allows us to do is to take basically a website written in HTML5, CSS, or JavaScript and turn it into a mobile app. JavaScript is a scripting language that is run by the browser engine. And once the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are loaded by the browser, JavaScript is used to manipulate the HTML and CSS to display information and make calculations without having to reload the site back into the browser. Another advantage of using JavaScript is that there are many JavaScript libraries and frameworks to help make development easier. And one of those is jQuery and jQuery Mobile, which we'll be using next week. As an example of other libraries that you could use and actually use for making a mobile app, here's a third-party library called 3JS, and it shows some really wild things that people are doing with JavaScript. That gives you an idea of some things that are possible. So you can make a nice web app which just runs in a browser, but you wouldn't have access to some of the features of the device your browser is running on. So PhoneGap turns your HTML web app into a native app for your device. Once it's a native app, you can sell your app on the App Store or at Google Play. So native apps allow you to have access to the device's contact database, GPS functions, the accelerometer, the camera, compass, and many more sensors that your phone or tablet has. So let's set up a simple project to do some testing in JavaScript and go through some of the JavaScript features. Like I said before, you can use any text editor you want. What you see is what you get editor, like Dreamweaver or an IDE. But let's keep it organized in a standard manner so that we can find assets and keep things separated in a good way. So here's what I do in NetBeans. So here I have my NetBeans IDE open. I'll just make a new project. It's going to be an HTML5 application. Mobile app class. We'll just keep it simple here. So here's my new project. And here's my HTML file that I'm working on. Now what I like to do is make a folder in the site root for the different assets that I have. So one is going to be style sheets. I'll call that CSS. And then another would be images. And another would be scripts. JavaScript in this case. So that should do it for now. Now with JavaScript there are several ways to make a script. You start out with a script tag. In an HTML5, all you need is just the script tag. You don't need to specify the type of script anymore. And the simplest command would be the alert. Hello world. This is a built-in function in JavaScript which pulls up a dialog box with this text in it. And the functions start with a function name and a parameter in parentheses and a semicolon. The parameter here is the text that we want displayed. So if we want to run this, I have Chrome set up as my browser, so if I hit play, it starts this and says hello world. This is the alert. Okay, another way to insert JavaScript code is to insert it from an external file. So we put a source in for this index.js file in the JavaScript folder. And that would be in this folder here, but it's not created yet, so I can say new JavaScript file, call it index.js, and here I can say alert from the index.js file, and it runs it from the index.js file. Now also I'd like to include a style sheet for this site, so as part of the setup I would put in some code here to include the style sheet from the style sheet folder, and I'm going to call that index.css, and that would be up here. I'm just going to paste the previously created style sheet in here. That will come in handy as we build our mobile app. So this is the bare minimum of a HTML page. Okay, let's get started with our JavaScript overview. We'll start with a short JavaScript example and dissect it. Through that exercise, you'll learn the basics of JavaScript syntax and practices. After that, we'll add on to that with jQuery and jQuery mobile, and also build a single-page site and dissect that example also. Okay, here I have a test HTML file. It's a regular HTML file with the usual head, title, meta, and some style sheet information here. We can ignore this for now. Actually, I'll comment it out so I can prove that it's not even running yet as a jQuery app. So this is just going to be pure JavaScript. And again, the goal of this is to familiarize you with JavaScript statements and functions. This will help you when you're going through other API documents and seeing their demos and examples. It'll give you the ability to see what they're doing and how you can apply it for your purpose. First thing I'd like to stress is to comment your code. It helps others and yourself to remind you what you're trying to do. So comments in JavaScript can be like this, between a slash and an asterisk, ending with an asterisk and a slash. Or you can just do single line comments with 2 slashes. And JavaScript can be placed anywhere in the HTML file. One way is to just start with the script tag, and then you put your script statements in between the script tags. Another way is to include a separate JavaScript file, and you do that this way, with the source equal to the path to the script file. Okay, this next section I'm going to be demonstrating this web page. So before we get deep into the code, I'd just like to show you what we're talking about. This is what we're going to develop. We're going to have some alerts that pop up and give us different states of the program. And also before we start, I'd just like to warn you, this is like getting 3 semesters of programming in 45 minutes, so it's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. So don't get overwhelmed, pause it if you need to. If you're able to understand everything we cover in these 45 minutes, you'll be able to get a mobile app working pretty well for this class. So let's look at the following code. JavaScript has some built-in objects. One is the window object, and that object has a method called onLoad. So when the window or the web page is fully loaded, we want it to run a function, and we define that function here. And everything between this curly bracket is going to run when the onLoad function is done. So at the end, I close it with another curly bracket and I comment, because it's so long, it'd be hard to find, that I'm ending the onLoad handler. So back to the top, I'm going to set some variables. Now, because these are outside of other functions, such as this one, these would be considered global scope. So the value of x set out here, or the value of y set out here, will be available to other functions within them. But in this function, we have a local variable, I call it. I declare it by saying var local variable equals 50. So that's local to this function. It would not be available outside of this function. So speaking of functions, you write a function in JavaScript like this. The function keyword, and the name of the function, and any number of parameters separated by commas. And then you call this function, write the name of the function, and then the value of the parameter. So when this function is called, sum becomes equal to the value of 8. So if I do x equals sum plus y, y is global here, it's 5, so 8 plus 5 should be 13. And I'm going to return x, so additional variable here is something I'm just declaring on the fly. You don't have to put the var on here like this. You can, and it's probably better. I'm just showing you that you don't have to. So it's going to return the value of x, so additional variable is going to equal 13, 5 plus 8. Another important piece of JavaScript is knowing how to do loops. You can do for loops, while loops, and do while, for each, and you can look those up in the JavaScript reference that I'll give you later. But for now, we're just going to do a for loop, and we're going to start with I equals 0, and it's going to loop through this until while I is less than the length of z, and then at each loop it's going to increment I by 1. Now the other thing it's going to do in this loop is keep concatenating the previous value of array text to array text. That you do by the operator plus equals. So where did we set up the array z? That's up here. Z equals new array. And these are the values of the array. z1, z2, and y is 5. So it has 3 values. It should go through here 3 times, and array text is set to nothing. So the first one, it should put in the array value at z0, which is z1, and then it'll concatenate on that a space. In JavaScript, you concatenate by putting the add symbol in here. And then again, for I equals 1, that would be z2. And I2 would be the value of y, which is 5. And we'll see this because I'm collecting this array text, and I'm making a big text message that's going to say addition result, which was this addition result, is going to equal the value. So this is a string equals, and then I'm concatenating the variable and the value will show up there, and then a line feed. And we make a line feed by escaping an n. And then to that I'm going to add another string to show the x global value. So x here was not set to anything, but in this function it got set to 13. So outside of the function, when I reference it here, it should equal 13. The local variable equals 50 in the function, but if I reference it outside of the function, it should be undefined, not 50. And then the array values, which I collected in here, I'm going to display as what we collected here as array text. And then at the end, alert this whole text message that I've created. So let's see what happens when we run it. I'm just going to refresh. So right here, the first thing that happens, it does these variables. It doesn't run the function yet, but here, additional variable. So it says add sum to y with an 8, and then it goes into the function, and then it says alert, variable with function equals. Variable with function equals 50. So that worked. The next thing, it gives me this text message that we collected here. The addition result is 13. That is addition variable. That's what we wanted. The global of x is 13, which makes sense. The local variable that we set inside this function is undefined because we're referencing it outside of the function. So it's undefined. And the array values are what we expected, z1, z2, and 5. So those are some very basics of JavaScript, but with this, I think you can do a lot of programming and functionality with it, and you could understand what the demos of the APIs are trying to do. But you'll see more as we go on. Now, each HTML page creates a DOM, or document object model. Here's my simple document. You can see it over here. We have a div with an ID called set to content, a link to Google, and the ID is link. It's working right here. Then another div, a text box, a button, and another button, which we'll use later. So I can reference all of these elements of the HTML using the document object model. So the link is this, and I can say get element by ID. This is a built-in function of JavaScript of the document object. So I say document get element by ID, the name of the ID, and then the first child and the node value of that child. Now what are we talking about with children and nodes? When you write HTML, you can see how if you indent it, it has sort of a outline format, and you can see it in this diagram. HTML is the highest element in the hierarchy, and then you have the head and the body. Those are two children of the HTML, if you will. And then the head has a child of title, and the title has text of JavaScript overview, and that would be here. Similarly, the body has a div content, and the div has these children, an a tag, a div tag, an input, and another input. And the content of the div would be referred to as the text of the div. And we'll get into other aspects. This could be more detailed, but this gives you an idea of what we're looking for. So these are nodes. So when we talk about the first child and the node value of the link, so where's the link? The link is here. The first child of the link is actually the text between the a tags. And we're going to alert that next time we run the script. Here we're going to set the variable of link to the object of link that this function returns. And if that object does not have an attribute of class, we're going to set an attribute of class to that link of green. And up at the top here we have a class of green, it's going to change the color to green. So that'll happen right after we close this alert. And then another alert will come up, and we're going to try to find the link, the next element sibling. So if we go back to the next element sibling of link would be the div. These are all siblings because this is the parent, this is the child, a child, a child. If they're all children, they're siblings. So the sibling of A, the next sibling of A is a div. And the value, the first child of that div and value will be alerted to us. Let's see what happens when we run this again. We're going to skip over these first functions. Okay, so it alerted the first child node value of link, and that is the text, a link to Google. Now when we hit OK, the link to Google should turn green, which it did. Okay, now this is a div, this is the div text right here, and it's alerting us right here, the get element by ID of link, the next sibling is the div, and we want the value, the first child node value of that div, and that's what it is. Another div content is the text there. Okay, now we have some buttons here. In JavaScript you have to set up on-click event handlers. The handler for this click button, it's an ID named click button, say on-click equals this function. So JavaScript will be listening for the on-click on this button, and whenever someone clicks it, it will run this function, which is up here, and it's going to alert button clicked. Another way to do it is to use the add event listener of click. And we're going to add one to the link. So when the link is clicked, it's going to run a function. The add event listener takes 3 parameters. The event, which is click for us, a function, and you can either be a function name or you can actually write the function right in the parameter list. And we'll talk about false at another time. When you click on the link, the function is going to also send an event variable or object. And so we can reference that by E. And usually when you click on a link, it's going to go to the link, what the link is assigned to in the HTML, but we can prevent that by using this command. So it won't go to Google like it looks like it will. It's going to do something else. It's going to prevent that default behavior. I'm going to set a variable message to the current target, which is a link to Google, the text of the current target. These are all, this may be confusing, but these are all functions and properties that are available in the JavaScript documentation. So if you see something that you don't understand, Google it or look it up in the documentation, and there's always great examples of how to use that. So if message is not null or is true, we're going to set the text box value to what that message is set to. And the text box is right here, and that's value, the value of it, JavaScript. So let's see what happens when we hit the click me. It says button clicked, just as we wanted in this function here. And if I click on the link, it changes the value of this text box to the current text of this target, as we see it in here. Okay, I've commented out a lot of the alerts, and we're going to move on to making a frequently asked questions section. So we're going to do this with just plain JavaScript. Okay, so we have a section called FAQs, and we're going to use DOM scripting to manipulate this. Alright, so what this is going to do is drop down, like we would have some content in here. Here's the question, here's the answer. And when you click on them again, they collapse and expand. How does this work? Well, let's go up here. So we're going to set a variable facts to the object that's returned from getting an element of ID facts. And the element with ID facts is right here. It's a section with an ID called facts. So we're going to set this section as an object, document object, and we're going to use that to get information. Now this syntax can be a little confusing. Sometimes people use a $sign, so it would look more like this. And that can be confusing with jQuery, so I changed it to a P just to show you can do it the same way. So P is a variable or a function with this parameter. And where is that function? Well, it's at the bottom of my script here. Here it is. Variable P equals function of a parameter called ID, which we're setting facts. And then we're just going to say just return that document object of ID and assign it to P. So running this function of P, so running this function with the parameter of the ID will return an object and assign it to this variable facts. So then we can use this variable with some JavaScript methods or functions and get some information back. So what are the H2 elements? This function returns all the information from the H2 element, or all the elements that are equal to H2. So we're going to have 3 because we have 3 frequently asked questions. And it's going to go through how many elements are returned. So here we have a loop again, and it's going through the length of this array that's returned and assign a variable node to the elements at that point in the array. And then at each one of these we're going to set up an on-click event handler. And JavaScript can use this variable to refer to the object that is currently active or has been clicked. So we're going to set this variable h2 to whatever's been clicked, and if get attribute of class equals plus, meaning the class of the h2 element equals plus, then we want to set it to minus. Otherwise, it must have been minus, so we want to set it to plus. And we do something similar here. The next element sibling, we want to see what the class of that is. And if it's closed, this is the content of the frequently asked question. If it's closed, then we want to open it. Otherwise, we want to close it. So let's just see how that works. So we click on this, it changes the color. Plus is blue and minus is red. So right now it's at plus. If I click it, it changes it to minus. The class to minus. And up here, minus is red and plus is blue. And also right now it's closed, so if it's closed it opens the next sibling which was set to fac1, which is really a div with a class of closed. So this can take something that we take for granted as a very simple operation, and it's sort of complicated to get it to work. So that's why we use jQuery to simplify some of our tasks in programming. So jQuery is a free open source library to make JavaScript easier. It also ensures cross-browser compatibility that plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript can have issues with. To use jQuery, you download the latest version and put it in the JS folder that we created. You can download it at jQuery.com, and once you have the file saved in the proper folder, you reference it by including a script like this. Version is the version that you downloaded. There's quite a bit fewer lines with the jQuery way, because there's built-in functions to take care of things for you. So I'm going to have to turn the jQuery system on. Here's my jQuery script. That's all I have to do for that. And down at the bottom, the HTML for the jQuery. The difference here between the HTML of the regular JavaScript and the jQuery JavaScript is not very different. I changed the name of the ID, jQFacts, and we're not going to need to assign classes to these h2 and div functions. We can parse through them with jQuery quite easily. So we'll show how that works out here. Okay, so we went through the HTML. Now let's refresh this and see how the jQuery fax works. What we do right away, here you see this function again, like the P, but now I'm going to use a $sign because that's the standard convention with jQuery. And it's also built in. There's no function at the bottom that we've used to make this work. It's in jQuery already. So we're going to reference the section jQFax and the H2 of that section. And this is how you do it. Because jQFax is an ID, you use the $. If you wanted to reference a class, you would just put a dot, like this. And every class called jQFax with an H2, of an H2, would get this click function working on it. And then jQuery also uses this variable to determine which object has been clicked. And it also has a function called toggle class. So if the class is not minus, it's going to set it to minus. And if it is minus, it's going to unset it from minus. So if this attribute class does not equal minus, after this happens, we're going to check, is the attribute class not equal to minus? If it's not, we want to hide the next section. Here's another useful function in jQuery. Next means the next sibling. Here we use next element sibling. So in jQuery, you just need to use the word next. And here's a function to just hide it. And hide has all kinds of other, could say, brothers and sisters. One is an animation effect called slide down. So I added that. Otherwise, I could have said show. But let's just do slide down to demonstrate it. And that's the end of the click. That's all there is to it. So let's see how it works. Refresh. So there's no class assigned to this at this point. So what we see here is just what we want. Is it set to minus? Or set this to minus. If it's not minus, hide it. Else, slide it down. So what happens first? It slides down and reveals the content under here. When we click it again, it hides and changes the class of the H2 back to its original state. Alright, I also wanted to show you the other alerts that we went through earlier. The first alert we had was to show the value of the link, which was up here, a link to Google. So when I hit refresh, the JavaScript to do this is the same as, this is the jQuery command to do the JavaScript equivalent of this. So we reference the link, and then we want the text of the link, and alert it, and that's what we get up here. Next, we're going to change that link to yellow. The attribute, set the class attribute of link to yellow. So when we do that, you see over here it changed to yellow. And then right away we want to show the next sibling text of link. So the next sibling of link was another div content, and the text is right here. So these are the equivalent commands of the JavaScript commands up here. Okay, now the text box alert the value of the text box. That's different than the text. We want the value of it, and that's text inbox. Now button click me jQuery says button clicked. So that is similar to the other button click handler we made, but we just use the jQuery identifier here, .click, and then the function to run when it's clicked. So those are the very basics and an overview of JavaScript and jQuery. Now we can add a plugin to jQuery called jQuery Mobile. But we have these data roles and different attributes of the div that jQuery Mobile recognizes and does its magic on. And this is all in the jQuery mobile documentation of how this all works. And they have a bunch of examples. So just like with jQuery, you can download the latest version of jQuery mobile to your JavaScript folder. And you get that at this URL here. And then you add the jQuery mobile CSS to your CSS folder and the JavaScript to your JavaScript folder. jQuery mobile JavaScript. And this has to come after the jQuery library. So here, we've done that here. So that's a short little page. And I didn't write any function for it. I just created the HTML according to the rules of the jQuery mobile API. And the scripts that I've loaded will take care of everything else. It knows that the data role is a collapsible set, so it's going to do some magic here. Let me save this. Mobile facts. See how it automatically expands and contracts. And it even closes others that if you have another one open, it'll close it before it opens the one that you want. So that's jQuery mobile. And if you go to jQueryMobile.com, go to demos, I was just using the collapsible set widget. You can see it working right here. And so when you find one that you need to use, you view the source and you copy it and you apply your information to customize it for yourself. And we have all kinds of examples for layout. These are all responsive to different screen sizes, so it's just wonderful how all this is available to us. I'd also like to mention jQuery has a great tool to change the colors of your theme for your single page app. You go to the theme roller for jQuery mobile, and there's instructions on how to use this, but basically you have global settings for your themes, and then you have 3 default themes that you can reference, A, B, or C, and you can add more. But you have control of all the different sections, so if you wanted to change the text color to red, it changes this here. And so you can preview what your app is going to look like. And then you export it, you download the theme zip file, and it includes a CSS and the icons for that theme that you just created. Check it out. It's pretty easy and really nice to be able to customize your site the way you want it. So finally, to make a mobile application with PhoneGap or Cordova, it should be designed with a single page framework. Now I've created a single page framework right here. And this is how jQuery mobile really shines. So here I've included the jQuery mobile CSS and JavaScript files and jQuery and the body, and then here we have a div of the page. So we have a div for our first page, which is our home page, and that section ends here. So each page of our site will be in a div, and it'll have an ID or a name. We're going to call this one the index. Here we have a header for this page and a footer. And I'm going to have the same footer on every page, so I duplicate that all the way down. Even the last page has the same footer. And then each page has a content div, and that would be that much. Now, of course, I looked up on jQuery mobile, and I wanted a list view of all the pages in my site. And I'm going to have 3 pages, page 1, page 2, and a settings page. The names of these pages are 1, 2, and settings. And those are, because you have a pound sign here, referenced by their ID. if you go to the next page here, page 1, the ID is called 1. So I referenced it in my link as 1. So with jQuery Mobile, if you just put a reference to a page ID, that's where it will navigate to, and it won't have to go to the reload the whole site in the browser. It uses jQuery and effects to slide to the next, or do a transition. I'm using a slide here. It'll use a transition to go to the next page or div. And same for 2 and for settings. And you can play with this. I'll post all this code, the JavaScript overview, and this page online so you can get started with designing your own single page site. Well, let's save this and see how it works. Alright, here we go. Here's my single page site. And you can see how it scales. And I go to page 1. It goes to that page, and the content would go here. Hit the back button, it goes back to my home page. Same with 2. Settings, I changed the transition to flip. And then I used a collapsible widget for these settings. You could use Ajax, the Ajax function of jQuery, which you can look up in the API to import maybe server data here. I use the API for jQuery Mobile to display these radio buttons and disable some of them. So that's what makes it easy to make a simple mobile app. And when this is all working, you can start testing with PhoneGap in making it not only a website app, but a native app. I know there's a lot of information we've covered here, but you can find great resources and help online. A good reference is w3schools.com. They have lots of tutorials and examples and reference sites, so you can look up particular commands or functions for JavaScript, jQuery, or jQuery Mobile. Another nice site is Over API. This is an example of the JavaScript reference with all the different functions and objects that are built into JavaScript. Let me just mention that for debugging, that Safari, Firefox, and Chrome have excellent JavaScript debuggers. They're either built in or you can install them as plugins or extensions. For example, this page here is in Chrome. If I go to More Tools, Developer Tools, it'll bring up everything you need for debugging. You can jump right to the JavaScript console. Okay, if there were any errors, you would see them here, or you can even test things right here, and it will try to execute what you type there in real time. If you go to sources, it'll show you everything that came into your page. Element browser, you can go through the DOM and look at this. So this span has this class, and then here you can see what this class is set to, colors and sizes and all the CSS information for that class. Okay, so here's an example of the simple JavaScript that we started with. If I go to the source, go to some JavaScript code here. So let's say I want the code to stop at this line. If I just touch this, okay, so it's going to stop executing here when I rerun it. See, it says paused in debugger. If I want to jump through the lines of JavaScript, here you can step over to the next function, and it goes to the next line. Here in the scope variables, I can find the value of, local variable. These are different breakpoints we have, and this many times helps me to step through and see if my program is functioning as I intended it to. That's just a start of debugging. I hope that's helpful, especially when it's hard to know how to select certain things from the DOM, and you can really search the DOM individually here or through testing with your commands down in the console. So now I hope you have enough information and resources to start building a prototype or working web app of your wireframe. You don't need to incorporate PhoneGap just yet, but you could lay out all your screens. And stay active on the discussion board so we can help each other out. Don't get stuck on a problem for too long. Likely other people have come across it, or I can help you too. Thanks, and next week we'll add in PhoneGap and Cordova libraries and start building native apps for Android or iOS. Thanks a lot.